Welcome back. You were watching Global Eye. US President Donald Trump has fired a fresh salvo on Big Pharma. The US government has imposed 100% tariffs on branded or patented drug imports. This will come into effect from the 1st of October. However, the government has clarified that these tariffs won't hurt a company unless they build a manufacturing factory in the US. The Indian generics industry is unscathed by this order, but select players like Sun Pharma and Wockhardt who sell branded drugs in the US will not be affected. It was not just Big Pharma. A slew of items were targeted by President Trump with additional tariffs. Imported kitchen cabinets and bathroom vanities now face a 50% tariff. Upholstered furniture will face a 30% tariff. Heavy trucks face a 25% tariff. This will take effect from the 1st of October as well. President Trump defended the decision, claiming unfair outside competition. The Trump administration is also planning to reduce the reliance on semiconductors made abroad. According to the Wall Street Journal, the White House is considering a plan to mandate a 1:1 ratio of domestically manufactured imported semiconductors. What this means is a company will be allowed to export semiconductors only if it supplies the same number of chips to the US companies. Any company failing to meet this ratio will face tariffs. To take this now forward, we're now joined by Jayant Dasgupta, former Indian ambassador to the World Trade Organization. Mr. Dasgupta, thank you very much for joining us. First of all, how do you see the trade negotiations that have taken place in the US? The Commerce Minister held extensive discussions with the USTR. The talks have been moving along positively. The Commerce Minister met various stakeholders, including investors, to discuss the India story. But it seems that we are still some distance away from a trade deal. What do you think could be some of the sticking points at this juncture?
The most important sticking point will be, of course, the rollback of the tariffs. The first tranche of that will be the 25%, which was the secondary tariff imposed from the 27th of August. And some kind of a reduction, substantial reduction in the first tranche imposed on the 7th of August of 25%. What we are hoping, it will come down to at least 15%. So this is something which, without which I don't think there would be an agreement. And the second, also very important point is that we will continue to buy Russian oil. And now it appears that we are also quite, we have progressed quite a bit in joint production of the Russian Su-57 fighter jets. So defense production wise, co-production and purchase of Russian military hardware, I think that is something which we will not be able to compromise on. And President Trump's administration will have to accept that. And the third point, of course, goes without saying on that dairy and agricultural exports, which have been a sticking point.
Okay, I would also like to ask you about 100% tariffs on pharma products that have been imposed by Donald Trump. And this is on any branded or patented pharma products, unless the company is building a manufacturing plant in the US. Ambassador Dasgupta, the pharma industry in India is saying the tariff impact will be limited. But if you were asked to quantify it, how would you do so?
If you look at India's exports to the US, I think this year, of course, we have exceeded $10 billion. There has been a 20% increase. But last year, it was $8.73 billion. A vast majority of the products which we export are generic drugs or, using active pharmaceutical ingredients, we have formulations which we export, which are also, not generic, but formulations. So these will not fall within the purview of the 100% tariffs. And for the time being, and I emphasize this point, I think the Indian industry is not going to get affected very much. There are a few contract manufacturers in India which do manufacturing of patent-protected drugs from, let's say, US companies or other companies worldwide. Their exports may get affected because unless the principal has a manufacturing facility in the US or is setting up something in the near future, they will get affected. So I think you mentioned Wockhardt and some other company which makes branded drugs, they could get affected potentially, but the overall hit would be very, very nominal.
Donald Trump has also imposed 50% tariffs on all kitchen cabinets, bathroom vanities, 30% tariffs on upholstered furniture. Does that have an impact on Indian industry?
I don't really think that will affect us very much, but because we are not very large manufacturers of upholstered furniture, for instance. Of course, the upholstery fabric, we do export quite a bit of that. So manufacturers in the US who import upholstery fabric from India and then fit it into furniture, which they may have sourced from China or some other country, that might get affected. But I think with this 50% tariffs, the upholstery fabrics also exports is going to get affected in any case. So that is one thing. The other point is very heavy trucks, which are also going to attract about 25% tariffs. That I don't think were actually exporting much by way of very heavy trucks, which President Trump has in mind. And the other point I wanted to mention in this context is that he is again invoking or going to invoke the national security exception for the very heavy trucks. Because he's saying, he's mentioned it, I think, in his tweet also, that it is about national security interest. Something to that effect.
All right. My final questions to you now, sir. What do you think happens between India and the United States now? What will it take to finally have a trade deal between the two nations?
I think we have our minister has already made it public that we are going to buy much more US oil and gas, and all other products which could help in rebalancing the so-called goods trade deficit which President Trump is focused on. But having said that, I think the sticking points which I have already mentioned, if there isn't considerable satisfaction on or almost total satisfaction on those points, I don't think we will be able to have a trade deal by November.
Right. And finally, if both Prime Minister Modi and President Trump end up meeting on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit, do you think that could lead to some positive outcome on a trade deal, or at least an understanding on setting aside 25% tariff, that additional tariff?
I think from what I can gauge, Prime Minister Modi would not be very forthcoming in having a meeting with President Trump without a very fixed kind of an agenda on which most of the agreement has already been arrived at. Because I don't think in any government functionary minister at that and the Prime Minister, of course, will get into a meeting with President Trump without having already decided the fine print of the agreement. So, unless we have an agreement between the two ministers, Minister Goyal and the minister from their side, two ministers from their side, by November, I don't think a meeting between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump will yield anything by way of a breakthrough.
All right. Ambassador Dasgupta, thank you very much for joining us on the program. With that, it's a wrap with this edition of Global Eye. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.